Most people see muscle as this lifeless, inanimate tissue that's just used to move objects in the physical world from A to B. How wrong that is. Muscle is much more than that. In the previous video, the video I call the sarcopenia video, I talked about what it means to lose muscle. If you lose muscle, which is called in the industry sarcopenia, you are at high risk of a long-term metabolic diseases. And I mean long-term in the sense that it will start early, but it will happen increasingly in a chronic way. One of them is called dementia. If you lose muscle, you're exposing yourself to a very high risk of having dementia in later life. And nobody wishes dementia on anybody, because what that means is you forget where you are, you forget about your own being, where you are in the real world. And that's really starting to be. No matter how physically fit you are, if you are not self-conscious because you have got something like dementia, it's absolutely devastating for that person and for their families. The other thing that happens if you lose muscle, and I talked about it on that video as well, is you lose the ability to have glucose disposal, because muscle is the biggest sink that captures glucose, meaning sugar, which then means it reduces the sugar from being in circulation in your bloodstreams, which then reduces your HbA1c, and therefore it means you are less likely to have things like diabetes. Now, it also becomes very good for you if you've got muscle, because it then allows you to have a big reservoir for basically the ability to create muscle. It allows you to have amino acids as a reservoir, and it also reduces autoimmune diseases, and so on and so forth. In that video, I talked a lot about the benefits of muscle over time. I also talked about how muscle, the benefits happen inside the body, invisible to others, invisible to you, unnoticeable to you, because it happens so slowly and it happens over time. But still, the results are inevitable. Be they good or bad, they will ultimately happen to you. They will visit you. Today, I want to change tack. Us humans, we tend to not pay attention to anything that happens very slowly, and particularly if they happen over time for a long period of time. Be that things that are beneficial, or be that things that are detrimental to us. If you think about it, our evolution wires us to react to things that happen fairly quickly, things that are dramatic. That's why people don't become rich, because they don't save, because they see it's at long term. People don't put money in pensions. That's why people do small incremental things that ultimately affect their health. So to avoid or sleepwalking into these long-term metabolic things, which I talked about in the previous video, still as valid as it is, I want to talk today about the things that will become almost immediate and impactful, that will happen to any one of us almost immediately, and I mean today, this week, this month, this year, if we don't maintain and grow our muscle mass. So one of them is your physical presence in the world, you and the world. What do I mean by that? In as much as we think we are intellectual, we are mind, we think, we intellectualize, in as much as we think we've got our physiology, we've got our chemistry, we should never forget that we are also a physical entity and we relate to the world in a physical way. Now, what do I mean? So think about it. You ultimately are a physical contour who gets up, who stands up, who moves, who sits down. Without this, it doesn't matter what the mind does, you're still non-existent. Even if your mind is agile, if your physical entity disappears or is disabled, you are not complete. Let me give you an example. In fact, the best thing to do here is to use two people, one called John, one called James. Let's say James is the person who, from his mid-30s, he's never ever done anything in terms of strength training, but he has been going to the swimming pool every Sunday with his children. he has been going on Sundays, maybe on a bike ride with his wife, and he has been going for a round of golf with his mates, and probably in his younger age, he's even done a bit of park run with the local community. All that paints a picture of James being a very active person. Now you imagine that person should really not have problems as a result of not being active. Wrong. I bet you, if you know anybody who does just these things I've mentioned or anything similar, just going for a swim, just going for a round of golf, just maybe cycling on Sundays, maybe just going for a park run, they will be losing almost the same amount of muscle as somebody who is probably not active at all. Now, why is that? It's because there is a very specific way which you have to move the body to allow the muscles to be maintained and grow over time. So in that case, if you are James, I can guarantee you that you will have been losing muscle mass at the rate of an average of 1% if you are between your 50 and 70 years of age. Now, that almost cumulatively means if you compound it, you will have lost maybe close to anything about 40% to half your muscle mass from when you were in your late 20s and early 30s. Now, that is absolutely devastating because of the things that happens to you if you lose muscle mass. Now, let's imagine somebody identical who is called John, not James this time, John. And if John has just done these things just for 30 minutes a day, probably even 15 minutes, but let's give them 30 minutes. They wake up in the morning and all they do body weight exercise, and that might mean 10 push-ups, 20 push-ups, whatever much they can do, and or sit-ups. And after that, maybe they got a few dumbbells, adjustable dumbbells in their home, and they do some body weight exercise, full body, for 10 to 15 minutes. And once in a while, they go for a long walk. Now, that protocol is absolutely, totally different. It's night and day compared to what James would have done. John is far more likely to have not only maintained their muscle, but probably to have grown muscle. Now, I'm taking things like eating protein and habits and controlling vices as equal between James and John. I'm just talking about, I'm holding those as constant, I'm holding those as the same. I'm just talking about the physical activity in that scenario. The difference between them is not just that one will have maintained their muscle mass. It's far worse than that. The differences are, one, John, who will have been building their muscle, maintaining their muscle, will have a fantastic relationship with the physical world. Remember, that's what I'm trying to make the point about here. It's you and the physical world. It's not only about how mental you are, how physiologically you're healthy you are, even though all that comes together. Physically, James will not be able to get up from the chair, a sofa, at the age of 50, 60, 70, without the use of his arms, if he's able to get up at all. He will not be able to walk up straight with a good posture. He will not be able to walk normal with very purposeful gaits. On the other hand, John will be able to sit on the floor, get up on the floor, from the floor, play with his grandchildren. He'll be able to walk like any normal human being, and he will be at least 1 inch taller, assuming they all started from the same height. Why? Because while James will be stooped with a bad posture, John will be straight up, and they will be night and day. If they were identical twins with the same DNA, and they had these lifestyles I've just mentioned, they will be totally different. And I'm talking about not internally, I'm not talking about the long term, I'm talking about how they look today. In fact, not only the difference will be so bad for James in terms of him and his relationship to the world versus John and his own relationship to the world, but the difference will be even worse between their individual relationships to others. So, for example, James, the weaker one, who's lost muscle, is far more likely to not become independent. In fact, to his wife, whether he knows this or not, he will not be seen anymore as a husband, as a partner. He'll be seen as a patient. I can guarantee you that, particularly if the wife is fitter and healthier, and they tend to be. Okay? And John, on the other hand, will be seen still as the leader, as this hunk, as this person who she used to look up to. And that's just between you and your partner. Between you and your friends, James, the weaker one, I can guarantee you, if they meet anywhere, whether it's in the pub, whether it's in the golf area, they will be looking at him as the weaker one. He'll be the one that will be needing help. If they all went on a trip in an aircraft, he'll be the one that the air hostesses will be asking for if they can help him put the luggage up in the compartment. So, not only that he and the relationship between him and the world, the actual outside world, like getting up, like sitting down, but his relationship to others will be totally different. It will be one of pity. If he is lucky, it will be empathy, but quite frankly, it will be lack of respect. Whilst John, on the other hand, will be seen as this leader. In business, younger people will be looking up to him. His mates, his friends will be looking up to him. His wife and family will be looking up to him as the hero. So the point that is so important to understand is that losing muscle, not maintaining muscle, not growing muscle as we age, particularly over 50, this is not only a death sentence by bringing upon a very large range of metabolic diseases, it also diminishes our respect in the world. A man's dignity comes from independence, from the ability of doing things for themselves, whether they like it or not, whether they accept it or not. Yes, we can all be intellectual. I'm all for that. Yes, we can all be mentally agile. I'm all for that. We can be sharp. But if we cannot do things for ourselves physically, if we cannot get up from a chair by ourselves without help, if we have to be pushed on a wheelchair at some point, if our partners, our family, our friends see that we are weak, we need help, I can guarantee you there will be pity, but that's what it will be. It will be pity. On the other hand, if you maintain your muscle mass, you maintain your physics over as you age, you will continue to have incredible respect because you will have it all. Because at that time, the likelihood is you have the time, you have the finance, you have the resources, you have the family, you have the relationships. The only one thing that tends to be missing is physical health. And that is so important that we should not let it slip away. How do you do this? I've already alluded to it. In EVERPRIME, it's very simple protocol. 5 steps in the morning. You can overlay on top of that more exercises in the gym if you like. But I've designed a system called the 5-step system. You wake up in the morning, you hydrolyze, you mineralize. What does that mean? You drink a glass of water and you drink a glass full of any minerals you like. I normally go for creatine. It doesn't have to be creatine. And then you do body weight exercise. That all these things I'm listing take about between 3 to 5 minutes each. You do body weight exercise, and that could be sit-ups, push-ups, or dumbbells overhead, just to move your body. It wakes up your system, and you then do a bit of cardio. If you've got a cycle, do it, or if you want to do burpees, do anything that moves your heart rate up. Then after that, during the day, sometime during the day, make sure you take walks, long walks. Get at least 10,000 steps. If you do this, you can add on top of that, which I do. You can go to the gym once or twice a week and make sure you do more varied exercises. But if you do what I've just talked about, that creates a baseline, it creates a floor. It just means you do not necessarily wither and die and become somebody who people have to pity, somebody who loses dignity even though they've got everything else. So here is my final guideline. Do not give yourself everything and forget about your physical health. You live in the physical world. We are mental, we're intellectual, but at the end of the day, we're still a physical entity living in a physical world. Now let's go.